turn on the recording. And we will go ahead and get moving today. So good morning. Thank you for joining me on a Monday morning for part 2 of our series on unlocking the power of record sets. My name is Miyako. I'm the Member Services Librarian for Public Services here at CCS. If you were able to come to part 1 was an introduction to record sets where we looked at how to create and manage the record set in Leap. Now, if you were not able to attend that session, but you're interested in watching it, it is available on the CCS YouTube page. Today's session is also being recorded, and this session will be posted online. Both the recording, presentation slides, the chat log, those will be emailed out to everyone who registered. So you will have access to the recording within the next day or two. So let me move over to our agenda. Here is our agenda for today. So in part 2, we will be looking at a handful of ways that you can use record sets in the library, specifically using record sets with the online catalog or the Power Pack, using record sets to aid in Reader's Advisory, help with collection maintenance, and how record sets together with Simply Report help with your reporting needs. So there are so many ways you can use record sets, and what we talk about today is not going to be an exhaustive look at what you can do. I won't be looking at specialized workflows like acquisitions or cataloging in our examples. I'm trying to keep them broad. And we will have a few minutes at the end if anyone does want to share how they or their libraries use record sets. So how I'm going to frame today's session, for each segment, we will just kind of talk generally about how record sets can be used for each area. And then we're going to highlight Polaris tools and functions that will help achieve that kind of use. So in part 1, we exclusively worked in Leap, but in today's session, we will be using Leap, we'll be using the Power Pack, the Polaris staff client, which is the Polaris desktop application for those who are not familiar, and Simply Reports, which is the Polaris report application. And I will always let you know if special permissions are required to use a particular tool. So before we dive in, there is one thing that I want to review from part 1, and that is the record set ID. So if you remember from part 1, let me just pause for a chat real quick. Yes, that's a great question. Question about can you send out the link to the first session? I can absolutely do that. So in your follow-up email from today's session, I will include the link for part 1 as well. So real quick, the record set ID. Every record set has a unique control number referred to as the record set ID. And many of the actions that we talk about today will use the record set ID. So I definitely want to make sure that everyone knows where to locate this number when working in Leap. The record set ID number can be found in the work form header, which is this area up here. So this is the record set ID. It's number 234774. And you can also locate it in what's called the properties view, which you can see by clicking or hovering over the little icon at the top of the page. So with that, let's get started. And we're going to start today by seeing how we can use record sets with the Power Pack. So using record sets with the Power Pack really gives you a seamless way to connect your materials and collections with your patrons. And how or where can you integrate these record sets in the pack? You can use a record set to create a carousel. And carousels are essentially virtual displays. You can also link to a record set from a web part. And additionally, you can generate code to embed a record set carousel on your website. And what happens there, when the user clicks on a title, it will take the user directly to that record in the online catalog. So we're going to see what all 3 of these look like here in just a moment. Before I do that, I do want to mention 2 very important things to keep in mind when creating record sets for use with the Power Pack. First of all, we can only use bib record sets with the Power Pack. We cannot use item record sets, and it should go without saying, we cannot use patron record sets. So when creating a record set to use with the pack, definitely make sure it is a bib record set. Second, ownership of the set must be set to the branch level or the library level. So if you've worked with record sets before, you know how your colleagues can't access a set if ownership is set to your username. It's essentially the same in the pack. It will only display sets owned at the library level or the branch level. Now I'm just going to pop over to the Power Pack. I have Fox River Valley's Power Pack open here, so we can have a visual of what these elements look like. So right away on the Power Pack homepage, you see there are these scrolling lists of titles, and these are what are called carousels. A carousel will display the contents of a record set in a horizontal scroll, and it displays a cover art. So carousels are very visually engaging. Now, when you click on an entry, it will take the user to the online catalog record here. Let me just go back. Now, carousels, they can scroll up to 50 titles. So ideally, if you're going to use a record set as a carousel, it will have 50 or fewer titles. Otherwise, some entries may get cut off and they're just not going to appear on the scroll. The other area where you can promote with record sets in the pack homepage is in a web part. So web parts are these individual boxes that make up the side dashboard in the Power Pack. Some web parts will link the user to a page in your website or to a database, but you can also link to a record set from a web part. Now, Fox River Valley uses them here to link to lists of, say, like award books. So we have links to like the Monarch list, the Caudle lists, and also to their library of things collections. Now, one thing I find very helpful having these two options is that each one allows you to highlight areas of your collection in different ways. So I mentioned that carousels are very visually engaging, but if you've worked with things like local collections or library of things in the Power Pack, you're aware that those types of items they don't have cover art. So having like a library of things carousel may not look the best. But as a web part, you don't need to worry about the cover art, right? So you can still connect users with these types of items without sacrificing that visual element. Plus, it also gives you the option of adding a brief description of what you're linking to. So for example, here we have these early literacy kits, and we can see that they provide hands-on learning for users 0 to 6 years old. And when I click on this link, it will open the pack up and list the contents of the record set so the user can then browse through them. So we see here this record set has 10 records in it. And again, for these library of things items, there's no corresponding cover art, but I do have the titles that I can look through and click into and get more information on. So here's how you can add a carousel or a web part. The first step, no surprise, is to create a record set. Again, it has to be a bibliographic record set, and the ownership needs to be set to that branch level or library level. Second, you'll need to note the record set ID number. So the pack uses that ID number to pull the results into the catalog. And then third, you'll need to ask CCS to add the carousel or the web part to the pack for you. So you just open a help desk ticket or email help@ccslib.org and tell us the record set ID number. And essentially that's all you need to do, just those 3 steps. One of the fantastic things about record sets in the pack is that once the set is displayed, it will automatically bring in any changes to the set. So for example, if Fox River Valley adds 2 new kit records to that record set, those new records will be reflected in the online catalog the next time the pack reloads, which takes place overnight. So if you make any changes to the records in a record set, you add records or you remove records, you don't need to take any action on the pack side. The pack will automatically draw in whatever is in the set. Any questions at this point? Okay. The next thing I wanted to show you is the Polaris Carousel Toolkit. So this toolkit will take a bibliographic record set and generate code that you can then copy and paste into your website or in a newsletter or wherever you can embed code. Now, this activity is one where you do need certain permissions. So to generate carousel code, you will need a bibliographic record set. You will need access to the staff client. And in terms of permissions, you'll need to be part of the pack content permission group or have a coworker with permissions who can use this tool for you. So I'm just going to pop into the carousel or the staff client here and show you how to generate code that you can use to embed a carousel. So your first step, obviously log into the Polaris staff client. I'm already logged in here. And you can find this tool in the utilities menu and select the very last option in the menu, Carousel Toolkit. So again, we're going into utilities and Carousel Toolkit. I'm going to click this to open up. And this is it's a pretty simple tool, I would say. There's only a few buttons at the top here, one of which is the option to create from record set. Once I click this, you are then prompted to click the Find button, which will help you locate the record set. So let me click Find. And when I click Find, the Client Find tool will open up. Now, just like the Leap Find tool, you can search by record set ID number, by the set name, by the set owner. Access to sets in the Carousel Toolkit here, it's like accessing sets in Leap. You're only going to be able to search for and use the sets that you have access to. So let me search for one of the record sets we used in last week's training. I'm just going to pop in the record set ID number here and click enter to launch my search. And when you've located the record set, just double click it to add it to the Carousel Toolkit. So I see the set name here. And the next step is to generate the code. And thankfully, to generate the code, all you need to do is either click Get iframe code, if you can use an iframe, or Get source code. And when you click one of these buttons, the staff client will spit out the code, and all you need to do is copy and paste it wherever you want to use it. Now, real quick, this pack context here, this should default to your library. And what this context does, so if a patron clicks on a title in this carousel, the context setting determines which library pack the patron will go to. So if my context is set to Glenview and I click on a title, that title will open up in Glenview's Power Pack. I'm just going to show you real quick what this looks like. Thankfully, there is a nice little preview button here that we can select to open up our carousel. And as you're used to seeing, the set displays in a rolling horizontal scroll. And if I click on a title, it's going to link me to the catalog record based on that context setting. It's taking just a few seconds to load here. There we go. Few other things to mention here. There is a built-in tagline for each library. What you see here is the default. Yes, we can change it if you want. So open a help desk ticket and CCS can adjust it. The second thing I want to point out is the carousel title. I usually talk a lot about using naming conventions with record sets, but I will say honestly, this is one exception where if you're going to create a carousel code to use, you will want the name of the record set to be what you want displayed. So in terms of the carousel toolkit, it's going to take the record set title and automatically make that the display title. So for this one, I may opt to leave off my usual convention of my library's three-letter code and my initials and just say, Marvel Studios Blu-ray at the library. So I did include a link in the agenda to online instructions for how to use the Carousel Toolkit if you did need to reference some step-by-step in the future. So those are, I'm going to close out of here and go back to my slides for a second. So those were just a few examples of how you can use record sets with the online catalog. The next area I want to touch on is how record sets can aid with reader's advisory. And this is an area where it really highlights the collaborative nature of record sets. So how can record sets help with reader's advisory? The key thing here is that record sets are essentially staff curated lists, which means you can use them as subject or for genre guides. So, when you're doing reader's advisory, you want to make sure that you have some solid titles to recommend, even if it's not an area that you're particularly super familiar with or if you read widely in. So you can have a list of reliable titles that subject experts put together that anyone on staff can reference on demand and leap. Plus, they're really easy to update without needing to print out a new page or list every time a change is made. They're also great for passive readers advisory. So record sets give you the ability to share curated lists with your users that they can access on demand by just clicking a link, right? So you can send them an email, you can post on socials, really anywhere you can add a link. You can very quickly curate and share lists, such as what you should read or watch when you're on the wait list for this hot new item, or it's excellent for promoting the backlist of featured authors. In addition, you can also use them for things like programming tie-ins or topical lists. So having curated lists really allows you to be responsive to patron interests, trends, community needs, and gives a really easy way to link users to relevant materials. So for example, if you have a virtual program on income taxes, you can provide a link to tax resources available for checkout. Or, after say a program on Chicago history, to include a link in an event follow-up email saying hey, click here for related titles. So again, what these really come down to are curated resources. And not only do record sets provide an easy way to maintain these updated lists that can be shared with patrons, but they're also something that staff can easily refer to without needing to set up a brand new search every time a patron asks about a topic. So with this, there's two different functions I want to show you that can help in these types of situations. So first, we're going to see how to create shareable links. And two, we're going to use record sets with power searches and Leap for easy staff access. And the great thing is neither of these functions require special permissions. Any staff can do these. So first, we're going to look at how to create a shareable link to a record set. And then when the user clicks on that link, it will take them to the pack and it will list the contents of that record set for them to browse through, just like we saw with that pack web part. So on the agenda, I've also given you a template for a record set link. So I put it up on the screen as well. And there's two elements in this URL that you will need to modify when you create a link. First is your branch ID, and second is the record set ID. Let's start with the record set ID since we're already familiar with that. Now, at the end of the URL is an element that says BRS equals, and BRS stands for bib record set. So you want this to equal the record set ID number. So in my example here, the record set ID number is 27833. So that's what you will enter after that equal sign. And that's how the link will know to pull results from that particular record set. The second element you want is your branch ID. So this is the element where it says CTX equals. And after the equal sign, you will add your branch ID number. So each library, each branch has its own online catalog, or basically your own Power Pack profile. And when clicking on the link, you want the user to be taken to your library's Power Pack page. And so we'll use that branch ID, the CTX equals value, to make sure that the link opens to the correct Power Pack. Now you can figure out what your branch ID is from like certain web reports, but I want to show you an even easier way to locate it. So when you're next on your library's Power Pack, look at your pack URL. In the URL, there's going to be a CTX equals value. The number after the equal sign is your library's branch ID number. So in our Glenview pack, the URL says CTX equals 30. And if I use 30 as my branch ID, it will open the set list in Glenview's catalog. Okay, so that's how you figure out your CTX value. Now, just like before, if the contents of this record set are updated, that will be reflected in the Power Pack, just like with carousels and web parts. So this link will not change if the contents of the record set are updated. The link will remain as is. Any questions about the link before I move on? Now, the other function I want to share here is using record sets with power searches. Last week in part 1 of this training, we reviewed how to locate record sets in Leap. This week, we're going to look at a more advanced method of searching for record set content that also allows you to save a search so you can quickly pull it up. And for this, we will use the Leap Find Tool's Power Search mode. So in the Leap Find tool, part of the setup is this search mode. This tells the Find tool how you're building the search. Most of the time, we're all using basic search mode, like in the screenshot here. And this just kind of allows us to build, I think, what a lot of us consider to be like a normal search, right? We add our conditions, we select our filters, we type in our keywords, that sort of thing. But one of the other search modes is Power Search. So Power Search lets us build a search using using a command language. But the cool thing about power searching is that you can save searches. So they're set up and at the ready for you. There's a couple ways that we can do this, but I'm just going to demo one method today that shows you how to use power searches and without needing to know that common command language. So for this example, we're going to frame it around high school summer reading lists. Our teen librarian has created bibliographic record sets for each school with the summer reading titles that we have at the library. And we've been sharing the link out to the set, and we have the carousel on the pack. So we've been getting a lot of questions about these books. So I'm going to go into my Leap right now and open up my Find tool. And then when I'm in the Find tool, I'm going to show you what this looks like first, and then I'll show you how to save a search. So when I'm in the Find tool, and if I want to bring up one of these saved searches, I will change my search mode from basic. I'm just going to click on basic to open up my options, select power search, and that changes my search mode to power searching. Now, if you click on this area where it says on saved, if I click on that, it's going to open up a list of all of my saved searches. And since the Find tool is currently looking for bib records, these are my saved bib record searches. If my Find tool is searching for item records, I'll see a different list. So as you can see here, I currently have saved searches for those Reader's Advisory Sure Bets list, but I also have a saved search for one of those summer reading list sets. And what happens if I select my saved search and launch it, it will give me a list of all the titles in that bib record set that I can easily access when a patron asks about it. Before we look at how to create and save a power search, I do want to mention that saved power searches exist at the username level. So this means that anything I want to save, I will need to create and save the search myself. It will only be available to me. My coworkers won't be able to access my saved search. So while that can mean more work if multiple staff want the same searches saved, it also means that you can curate your own searches based on your service area. So, as a youth staff, I can have my own saved searches versus an adult services staff member. So let me show you how to save a search. Okay, I'm just going to cancel out of here and come into my Find tool fresh. So my end goal is to see a list of bib records from a bib record set. So to start with, I'm just going to stay in basic mode for now. I'm not going to make any changes. And that's because the key is to set the search up first and have the Find tool translate it to a power search for me. So for this search, I'm going to stay in basic search mode for now. And I'm going to tell the Find tool to search by record set ID number. And when it searches by record set ID number, what it does is it looks for all of the bib records within that record set, and it brings it into my results list. So let me type in my bib record set ID number, 735. And then now I will change my basic search mode to power search. So I'm just clicking on basic search to open up my options, and I will select power search from the list of modes. And this is what translates the search for me. So I don't need to know power searching language. And then all you need to do to save it, at the end of the search bar is this little floppy disk save icon. So if I click on that, it's going to allow me to name my search and save it. So let me just name this real quick. So I'll say South Summer Reading. And then when I click save, it's now going to be an option under that list of saved searches. So now let me go back, cancel out. Now when I have someone come to the desk and was like, hey, I'm interested in those summer reading lists, all I need to do is come into the Find tool, change to my power search mode, and then click on this unsaved list to see all of my saved searches. So I will ask them, are you from North High, South High? I can click the appropriate reading list, launch my search, and then I've got all of the bib records at the ready for them. So this is definitely a more advanced way to use the Find tool with record sets. Your agenda does include a link to instructions on how to set up and save a power search in Leap for you to reference if you do want to experiment with saved searches. I'm just going to pause and just see if there's any chats real quick. Okay. Are there any questions before we move on to the next segment? Nothing at this moment. Okay, so moving on. Another area that record sets can be helpful is with collection maintenance. So what are some of the things that I can do here? Sets contain records that can be worked on or modified individually, or allow you to easily bulk change everything in the record set at once. Because of this, record sets are very helpful for any kind of record maintenance or data cleanup. Also, since you can add records to sets individually, sets give you the ability to really focus in on a specific group of records, which makes them really helpful with weeding. And for those who do any type of outreach, sets can also help you manage and retrieve checkouts to a set of users. So our previous segments worked mainly with bibliographic record sets. This segment is going to focus on two examples that highlight item record sets and patron record sets. So to start with, we're going to look at an example where record sets can help with weeding by evaluating a really focused group of item records. When weeding, staff often come across items they're like on the fence about, right? I know I did. I'd have some items I wasn't sure about, and then I had a manual way of recording circ stats, make a note to come back to these items in 6 months to see if they had any more circs. Now, record sets can help you track these items. I'm going to show you a staff client report called the Record Set Circulation Report that you can use exclusively with item record sets. This report allows you to specify a date range and get circulation stats just for that date range. So this is one of our demos that does require access to the staff client and special permissions. So to generate this particular report, you will need an item record set, access to the Polaris staff client, and be part of the reports and notices permission group, or have a colleague that can run that report for you. So let me pop over to Leap. So like I'm doing my weeding. I have a handful items that again, I'm on the fence about, but instead of creating, a separate spreadsheet and entering the data in there manually, I'm just going to scan these items into an item record set. Now, whenever I'm ready to come back to these items, instead of clicking into each record to check out their circulation stats to see if they've grown, I'm instead going to run that report. And before I move over to the staff client, I will just make a note of this record set ID number because we will need that. We will need the record set ID number to run the report. So at this time, the record set report is only available in the production staff clients and not the training client. So I'm just going to make sure I open up my production client here. And in the staff clients, you will find this report. Again, we're going to go into the utilities menu, but this time will be in utilities under reports and notices. So utilities, reports and notices. When I open up reports and notices, I'll see a number of folders here, and this particular report is found under the circulation folder. So I'm just going to double click that to open it up. And the report itself is called Record Set Circulation. So when I double click on this report to run it, what it will do, it will prompt me to enter in some report parameters. So to start, I need to enter in the record set ID number so it knows which records to look at. So let me just add in my item record set number here. And then next, you can tell the report what time frame you want to run stats for. So in this example, I want to see how much these items circulated from the last time I looked at them 6 months ago to today. So I will specify, I will click on the dates to expand it, and I can use the calendar now to adjust my date. So I'm just going to specify October of 2021, say October 4th. And my end date will be today, April 4th. And then additionally, you have the option to scope the checkout stats. So if you wanted to count circulations from intra-CCS loans, you can say all libraries. If you only want to see numbers for checkouts from your own library, you do have the ability to limit stats just by a certain location. For this demo, I'm going to leave it at all libraries. So once you have your parameters set up, you will click Submit to generate the report. I will say sometimes the report generates quickly, other times it can take a few minutes. Just in case it looks like it's going to be one of those few minute situations, I did run the report earlier so we can at least see what the report looks like. So once the report generates, what you'll have here is you'll have a list of each item and you can see if it's circulated or not. So this title right here, beautifully organized, in between October 4th and today, it has had 3 circs. So I might be like, okay, I'm going to keep that item. Another one, Century 21st Guide to a Stress-Free Move, that has 0 circs. I might be like, okay, time to let that one go. So again, you can easily see what circulated, what hasn't, and make your final decision on weeding those items. There's going to be a point in our training when the report pops up, so just a heads up for that. Okay, our next example is going to look at how patron record sets can help manage checkouts for a group of users. So you can use record sets to check on items checked out to a particular type of card, like school cards, teacher cards, outreach patrons, or even in-house cards. Again, this activity doesn't require any special permissions or tools. So any staff member can do this. All you need is a patron record set. So in this scenario, I work with area schools. The end of the school year is coming up. I want to make sure we get back the items checked out to our teacher cards. So I have a record set here. Let me just open it up. 5, 6. I have a patron record set that includes all of the teacher cards at a local elementary school. Here, I have one with some dummy accounts. These disclaimer, these aren't real checkouts or real people. Now, when I'm ready to check on what these teachers still have out, I can open my patron record set. And then instead of clicking on like each record to look at their list of checkouts, what I can do instead is I'm going to generate a list of items on all these cards. And I will do that by an action found under this top actions menu called Create Item Record Set. And for those who attended part 1, you've probably seen this in action before. We just pause to, yes, so comment from the last segment, when you see that an item circulated 3 times, it could be to other libraries, other libraries, not just your library patron. That is absolutely correct. This report here, there isn't a way to differentiate between circs to local patrons versus circs to like reciprocal borrowers, so you could scope to checkouts at your location. Again, that doesn't tell you if it's a local circ or a reciprocal borrower circ. So that is true. That is a limitation of the report. Okay, going back to this patron report. So for my patron record set, I have an action to create an item record set. And when I select create, what Leap will do is take all the patrons in my patron record set, look at what they have checked out, and then add those checked out items to an item record set. So with the click of my mouse, I can have a list of all the items the teachers at this school still have out. So like when creating any new record set, you will need to give the record set a name and set and indicate ownership level. So let me do that just real quick. I'm just going to say, let's say, okay, file teacher checkouts 2022. Additionally, when creating an item record set from a patron set, you do have the ability to filter out certain types of items. Now, I want to see everything these teachers have checked out, so I'm not going to use the filter options. And I'll just say create. So now I have an item record set here. These are all, it contains 27 items, so these are still the items that the teachers have checked out. And to make this even easier, there is a way to download this set as an Excel file. Again, this will be review if you attended part 1. As long as the ownership level is set to the library or branch level, and I'm just going to do that right now. Let me save my changes. If the set is owned by the branch or the library, you can again click into this top actions menu and you will see an option to export these records. And what that will do, I'm just going to click export and then confirm my export. And what that does is it downloads an Excel file of the records in the set. So now I have an Excel spreadsheet that I can attach in an email to the school and just say, hey, please return these items to the library by the end of June. So those are just a couple record set related actions and tools that can aid in your collection management. In our final segment, we will look at how record sets and Simply Reports together can supplement one another. So we mentioned in the collection maintenance segment that sets allow you to be more deliberate in how you group your records. And if you've built reports in Simply Reports before, you know that it may not be as easy to pick and choose which records to include in a report, right? You may not have a way to drill down to just the individual records you need and filter out the rest. However, with record sets, I can be very deliberate and pick and choose which records I need. But the downside of that is that the data fields in a record set are locked in. So for example, an item record set does not display the loan period code attached to the item or like the year-to-date circulation number. But by using a record set together with Simply Reports, I can both isolate to just the records I care about and include the data I need to see about the item records. For this segment, we will be working in Leap and Simply Reports for both examples. And in terms of permissions, staff will need Simply Reports permissions in order to log into that application. Let's go back to that teacher card checkout example. So my exported item list does not include the name of the person the item is checked out to, because that's not one of the fields that you see when looking at a record set. However, I can add that field in using Simply Reports. So for most things that we looked at today, we relied on that record set ID number. However, with Simply Reports, we will actually locate the report by the record set name. So I'm just going to make a mental note of the set name. Okay, and let me open up my Simply Reports here. Now in Simply Reports, we're going to run a report from an item record set. So that means I'm going to click into the Items tab. If we were using a patron record set, we'd be in Patrons tab. If we were using a bib record set, we'd be in the bibs tab. Most of the setup you're going to do for this report is in the output. So this is the information on top. This is the information that you want to see about the items in your record set. And this can be things like the item barcode, the item call number. Most of the time, it will also be the title. So let me just scroll down and pull in a title. For this particular report, we not only want information about the item, but we also want to include the corresponding patron information. So when I'm running an item report and I see patron info in my output, when we use these patron output options in an item report, it's going to bring in information about who the item is currently checked out to. So for this particular example, I'm guessing I'll probably want the patron barcode, maybe the patron name, possibly their email address. So whatever data you need that's going to help your report. And then for this example, I'm just going to do a quick sort by patron name. Now, the only other thing I need to do is tell Simply Reports to pull in the items from the record set for this report. And this is so easy. To do this, all you need to do is click into the Item General Filters section. And then this very first filter where it says Item Record Set, you'll select that checkbox to activate it. And then select the name of your record set from the list. And I'm just gonna have to scroll through a lot of record sets here to find my name. I know it started off with GVK and then my initials. So we will get there. Here we go, GVK, MFL, teacher checkouts. Once you've selected your record set, all you need to do is click submit to generate the report. And now I have a report of items from that record set, but with the supplemental information that I need. Let's use this with one more example. This time I'm going to highlight a scenario to use with patron record sets. So in this example, we did some outreach over the summer. We registered users for library cards at our weekly farmers market. And at the end of the summer, we wanted to demonstrate how effective our outreach was by showing how many of the people we registered used their card. So what we did over the summer, as we registered new cards, we also scanned them into a patron record set. And I'm just going to open up that record set right now. I think that should be the right one. As we issued the cards, we scanned the number into the record set. So what I have here is a record set of test user accounts. So again, disclaimer, these are not real patrons. And then later in the year, when we're building reports or when we're trying to determine what outreach efforts were most effective, we can use our record set to gather that relevant data. And again, since we're going to be in Simply Reports, we are going to use the name to identify the record set. So let's just make a mental note of that. Now this time in Simply Reports, since we're running a report based around a patron record set, we are going to work in the Patrons tab. So we just want to list these patrons, right? But we especially want their last activity date so we can see if they're using their card or not. So I'm just going to add some output. Again, this is the information that you want to see about the patrons in your set. Typically, it will be things like the patron's barcode, address or email address, the patron's name, that sort of stuff. For this report, I'm just going to add their name. And for this particular report, we absolutely want to make sure that we include the patron last activity date. So this is this is one of those data points that we can't see when looking at the record set, but Simply Reports allows us to add this data in. Last activity date reflects the most recent date the patron used their card, right? So there's a number of patron initiated activities that's going to update this field, things like checking out at the library, logging into the online catalog, or checking out an ebook. There is a complete list of, and there's our report. There is a complete list of conditions on our website on the circulation manual if you ever do want to reference it. So the other thing I'm going to do for my report is sort by the last activity date. This will group everyone who hasn't used their card yet together, just to make figuring out stats a little easier. And again, the only other thing I need to do now is tell Simply to pull in the users from that patron record set for this report. So again, we will find that option under the first filter section, the general filter section. And it's the very first filter option. This time it's labeled Patron Record Set. So I'm going to click the checkbox to activate it and then select the name of my record set from the list. Hopefully this time we'll be able to find it a little more quickly. There it is. Okay. And then when I'm ready, I'll just click Submit to launch my report. So in my results, I can see the patron last activity date here. Any blank fields tells me that the patron has never used their card. So with this, I can see who's been active and who hasn't. I can report and tell my administration that out of X number of people who registered at the farmers market, over 50% have used their library cards. And not only that, but I can also pick out trends. So if there are a lot of users with a last activity date of like August or September, I can see that these farmers market patrons are losing interest once the fall hits. And maybe that tells me that, we should increase marketing during that time of year. And one thing you can do with this, you can always like rerun the report to include things like their email address or their street address so that you can send them information about the library and encourage them to come back and use their card. So again, Record Set will allow you to group together a very focused set of records. And then you can take that record set and add layers of data using simply reports. Okay, so we have looked at a number of ways that record sets can support staff with the Power Pack, with Reader's Advisory, collection maintenance, and how they can supplement your reporting needs. So in these examples, we've looked at a variety of Polaris tools and functions that you already have access to that you can use when working with record sets. Now, in the last minutes of the session, I did want to open the floor up to the audience and see if anyone is interested to share how they and their libraries use record sets. So feel free if you want to chat. I'm more than happy to read it out loud. Also, feel free to unmute yourself if you wanted to just talk over audio. And if no one has anything to share today, that's absolutely okay. Keep this in mind. Maybe next time you're at a technical group meeting, if this topic comes up, you will have something that you are interested to share with others. Oh, I've got a chat. Carly says they use them for Reader's Advisory lists at Palatine. That's really good to hear. And at Huntley, we use the bib record sets for lists in the pack. They've recently started a feature titles list each month. I will say, if you are ever browsing on the Power Pack, switch up the branch. Use that library dropdown if your library has it to check out a different library's Power Pack. There are a lot of really fantastic things that libraries do with those packs online. Yeah, and someone says, I will now use the record set for outreach programs, i.e. college sign up. That is such a perfect way to use record sets. And there's my report going. I'm just going to click out of there. So some of you may be thinking or maybe typing, while you're kind of gathering your thoughts, I just want to say that to thank you for spending the time with me this morning, and to remind everyone that the recording of this session will be available soon. In your follow-up email, you will get links to both part 1 and part 2 recordings. You'll also get the slides again and the chat, and also a link to an eval form if you have a few minutes to fill it out. That really does help us plan and figure out virtual training sessions. So again, if you have any questions, please don't ever hesitate to email help@ccslib.org or reach out to me directly. We love answering questions about record sets. So with that, thank you. I hope everyone has a wonderful week. I'm going to stop the recording, but if anyone does want to hang around and chat about record sets, please feel free.